Welcome everyone to this conversation that we're having today. I'm with Vincent May, Paolo Castaneda, and Viet, and we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, and it's those differences between traditional wushu and modern wushu. Okay, depending on what you do, you might have a different opinion. And I just want to let everybody know that we are sharing our own thoughts, okay, based on our personal opinion and personal experience, okay. The only thing here is that we all share a lineage, which is our Wutan lineage, right? And we might have some common thoughts, okay, but we just want to make sure that everybody understands that. So let's get started. So one of the things that I was thinking of is let's see if we can discuss about what are the origins of traditional wushu, okay, as we know as traditional wushu and modern wushu, okay, and see if we can talk about the history behind it, right? Because modern wushu is from probably around 1950s compared to traditional wushu, which goes really back, right? So let's start with that. Let's start with the origins, the history behind it. Who wants to start?
Let's start. I mean, from Jorge, I mean, you talk about why don't you start? Like, you should start. You should start from because you threw out the 1950s, and from my knowledge, a little later than that. But why don't you? I'm curious. Why don't you?
So
Yours?
historically, right, when the communism took over in China, there was, I don't want to say a need, but some kind of a push to standardize wushu in China, okay? And that came from the Communist Party back then. And I think that started around 1950s, early 1950s, at least the conversation and let's get together and let's try to put all the styles that we know. And I don't want to go too deep about it because it's there. Some things happened back then, right, with masters, okay, and Shaolin monks and all that. So I don't know how deep we want to go into it, but in the 1950s, I think that's when it really started to become an idea. And that thought about let's standardize all that we know and probably northern styles, southern styles, right? Sanda and probably Tai Chi, right? That's what we know as, I think, as a modern wushu. So, Vincent, you were talking, you thought it was a little bit later than that when we started. I think officially when we had kind of modern wushu competition or something like that, it was late in the 60s or 70s, but that's when I think it all started.
Yeah, my knowledge of it. I mean, obviously, I'm not a historian, right? So this is from. It could be inaccurate, but this is from what I know, right? What I know is that the Cultural Revolution, led by the Mao Party, that was started in the 60s, right? Then it actually ended in the 70s. And then during that time, they were oppressing, any martial artist because that's considered culture, they consider old stuff, old cultural stuff. So they're trying to suppress it, capture martial artists, ban or close any martial arts schools, temples. So basically, martial art was a big forbidden activity or practice, and that's why you see a lot of people said that martial art died, traditional martial art died in China, but which is interesting because you see a lot of very authentic Xingyiquan from Shanxi because that's so far away that the Red Army couldn't reach. So there's still that's why in those area the Northwest still able to keep a lot of authentic Xingyiquan and Xingyi as well because China is huge, and even if they have armies all over the place, there are still places that they couldn't cover. But anyway, so it was suppressed, and then come the 70s. No one in the world knew about Chinese martial art, and then there comes Bruce Lee. Even in Hong Kong, martial art was very secret, right? So every teacher didn't want to teach any outside student. It's very like traditional. And then came Bruce Lee out of nowhere. He's in pop up in San Francisco and start doing all these cool stuff on big screens. And people ask him, "What is this?" Say, "This is Chinese kung fu." And then everybody's like curious. Oh my God, this is Chinese kung fu. And then they went to China. They didn't see anything. And then the Chinese government noticed it, and there are all these people coming to China looking for so-called Chinese kung fu in Hong Kong as well. And and the Chinese government basically, gathered a bunch of materials that were not. They saw an opportunity. They gathered a lot of materials that were gathered, like the books or scrolls that weren't destroyed, and gathered athletes and trained them upon with the movements that you see in these books, right? So in the books, as we know, they're all statics movements. It's out, it's out, it's out. But there is no in-betweens. So they made up the in-betweens with the movements. So that's why they have all the movements in statics, but in between, that's where we lost all the essence of all
that transition between
right.
the moves. Yeah.
Right. So that's basically from my angle, my perspective. So my perspective was that, they gather these things, they put out a movie, the first martial art movie, Shaolin Si by Jet Li.
Jet Li.
And it was like, it blew up. And then together with Jin Yong's novels, they started to, create a story around Shaolin, Wutan, and all these menpai. And it just kind of rised up and people love it. And from there, you have the first generation of Wushu team, then continue
which was
on.
part of the Beijing team,
Yeah.
which was Jet Li and all the masters were part of. Actually, they were in the movie as well, the Shaolin Monk movie.
Yeah. And then they started to systemize it, standardize it, creating competitions and schools and here and there, and literally create an ecosystem around it till today. And I wanted Byron Jacob to join this because he actually participated in a lot of the administrative work, behind. I mean, with the whole Wushu committee. So he knew a lot more stuff, real stuff. I don't know how much he can really tell on the internet, but
yeah,
it'll be interesting to have him, on this. But that's my side of the understanding of where did the Xin Wushu came from. Is that anyone have any like different understanding?
Since Paolo is my senior, I'd like to hear his opinion. He's the farthest away, and he is more senior to me. I'll give my opinion last. So,
but he doesn't want to put you in the spot.
Yeah.
We all have mutual respect for each other, but Paolo is he's been with the system for quite a bit of time, and he's trained in multiple areas, right? So instrumental in not only promoting Wutan, Alaska, but when he moved over to Europe, he's been in multiple locations there. So I think that he probably has an interesting opinion, especially in the Nordic countries where maybe Chinese martial arts is not as well known, right? Mm-hmm. I think Paolo would have an interesting take on this question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a historian as well, but I mean, when we're talking about standardization, I mean, we could even go before the 1950s, right? In Nanjing Gosuken, right? So when all the famous masters of 1920s, early 1900s, had a center where they're able to exchange that information about their respective style, Shaolin, Baji Chuan, Xingyi Chuan, internal styles, Tai Chi and Bagua. So I mean, we could even say that it goes before the communists, right? Where there was a move to standardize the Chinese martial arts, and then during Cultural Revolution, we had the issues where it was The practice of martial arts was, again, old fashioned, get rid of the old, move, bring the new. So like Vincent said, a lot of that stuff was lost. But I think that at the same time, a lot of the traditional Chinese martial arts went underground, right? Maybe it might have been as well, like the proximity of the government versus some of these village styles and so forth. Like even in Shandong province, like praying mantis pretty much was kept alive in Shandong province. So, but even I would say maybe in Beijing, right? Because Beijing is the hub of Xingyi Chuan, and a lot of the good Xingyi styles still were preserved over there. So because of going underground. But when the way I see it with regarding to the move to modern wushu is like I don't want to be saying that okay, traditional Chinese martial arts was a threat to the government or whatever. It could have been. We don't know. We weren't there. But they definitely took out a lot of the martial aspects of the Chinese martial arts, made it much more into like floor gymnastics,
Into a sport,
more into a
essentially.
sport, yeah, and something that was more like pizzazz, right? And it's interesting as well that Vincent's point where the transitions was lost because they were learning from books and from the stills and making up in between because I mentioned this as well to Vincent. I had a modern Wushu guy come over to our class, and when the Jiben is outstanding, perfect postures, extremely good leg strength and body coordination. But when you touch hands with them, it's empty. There's nothing there.
Yeah, but perfect postures, right? For what?
Hmm.
And I don't want to jump into applications and all that, but when you see a compu very low, and is that practical? Like, can you actually apply that into a fight or something? It's I don't know.
Yeah, I think like Paulo said, I mean, when you touch him with a wushu guy to me are athletes, right? Might as
Mm.
well
Yeah,
touch with a a gymnast, right? Or a badminton player, someone who's very athletic, very agile, very quick, or a
yeah,
soccer player. But when you touch him, basically there's no connectivity to the body and the ground.
that
So that is
structure, right?
right. And then that itself is tie in directly. Why do we need that rooting? Because of application, so we can apply it. Then there's no application behind the so-called the new wushu because there's no rooting. Because they train differently. Like they went the more athletic route, acrobatic, which is also quite impressive as well. I couldn't do that.
I
I think
can't.
we need to use like different criteria, right?
Mm.
It's evolved where the two arts are separate, right?
So
And I have just a little bit of judging experience, and I've noticed that in competitions, oftentimes people who are not the cream of the crop wushu practitioners, or they're too old to do some of the nandu, right? They'll
Yeah.
compete in traditional divisions, right?
Mm.
And I always, would favor those because I've seen those compulsories enough where I can tell what's a wushu form and what isn't, right?
Mm.
And I would always give the person who was a little bit slower but a little bit more precise, I would give him a little bit of a leg up compared to just a retired wushu athlete, right? And my criteria for when I see, when we talk about postures or we talk about, how it feels when you're touching hands and it feels empty, what is your measure? And for me personally, I think about 内上颌, 外上颌, right? Alignment for us in traditional martial arts is different from the alignment in Wushu, right? 现代 Wushu has a lot of, you have to say it for what it is. I mean, historically, we think of why was like Changchun picked, right? Well, because the communist government, I think, was influenced by the Soviets and they were influenced by gymnastics, right? And so they brought that in, right? And so that what we call perfect posture, we're talking about, super low, and you can't, and everything is just super dramatic.
Artistic.
Dramatic. Yes.
And that would defeat that alignment where we have, you know, our shoulders and our hips, or elbows and our knees, or our fingers with our toes in alignment with each other, right? 六合, 6 harmonies, right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about 精气神, right? When you're touching hands and you don't feel anything, it's because that practice is just like 皮毛, right? It's for appearances. It's not really meant to be anything else more than a demonstration, right? You know, to your topic about, I know I'm going back a little bit, but, you know, in terms of, you know, were Kung Fu masters persecuted? I think this is a narrative that we've been brought up on, but it's very nuanced, right? Because I think that when you really look at the history, and I would say I'm only amateur historian, right? I'm not even a pro historian, but it depended on what side were you on, right? For example, Li Ziming, who practiced Liang Chengpu, he didn't suffer through the Cultural Revolution. Why? Because he protected a very high-level communist official, and that's why his lineage was not really affected, right? I mean, he was able to move Dong Haichuan's body, right, and to another burial place and promote that during all of this turmoil.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to if you were on the nationalist side, right, and you were fighting for the wrong side, yeah, you're going to be persecuted. So I think that to say that all traditional Kung Fu is gone, right, or would disappear, they were, like, martial arts were persecuted, I think much more nuanced than that, right? In places that were, you know, if you were out in the village, out in the sticks, and, you know, there isn't a government official for miles, you've been tilling that land for generations, likely you were not affected. You're still practicing your Jibin Gong, right? So I don't know. I think right now to say like there's no traditional Kung Fu on the mainland and it's all Wushufied, not necessarily, right? We don't know enough, right? China is a huge place, and there are places probably untouched by whatever happened, right? They just kept on living the way that they did, right? And then efforts of standardization. I mean, yes, Nanjing Wushu One is one effort, but you can even argue, even with Huo Yanxia in the establishment of Jingwumen, right? That was another effort at standardization, right? And even all throughout all of different provinces, right? So even Shandong had their Qingdao Wushu One, right? There were smaller little efforts, right, even within a provincial level to standardize, because Kung Fu is so rich. And when it came to competition, no one knew what they were looking at, right?
It's so diverse.
Yeah. So, you know, these efforts at standardization, whether you want to call it Wushu now or Wushu before or whatever, it's always been a thought, right? Because people didn't know what they were looking at, right? And you want it, just as China itself has kind of come together as a nation, right? Where you have a national language, right? You have a feeling of, well, we're going to be under one flag, many races all together, and we're going to be Han Chinese or Chinese, you know, or promote this image to the world. The same thing has gone on with martial arts as well, right? And these arts were cherry picked, right? Changquan was cherry picked because of the influence of Russian aesthetics, right? Things have to look good, acrobatic, right? And then when it came to, you know, when they picked Nanquan, they picked Hongjiaquan, Hunggar, and Cailifo, they brought it together, right? Because those were the most popular arts, at least outside, right? Nowadays, you have a standardized form for almost all of the styles, right? There's a national form for praying mantis that's been practiced for at least 50 years at this point, right?
Yes. Yeah, there are videos, very old videos of that form, right?
And Yuhai, actually, he is a 7-star mantis lineage holder, right? The first generation of Wushu athletes were actually people who had a traditional background, right? That was the golden age of Wushu. Right?
Like Yuhai, right?
And with every subsequent generation now, like, oh yeah, you know, I'm a Nanquan practitioner, I'm a Southern Fist practitioner, but I want to compete in the Xinyi division. Let me pick a video and I can copy it. Xinyi Liaohuan looks pretty simple, so I can do this, right? I'm athletic, right?
Yeah.
So
I can jump.
I think what defines Wushu now as opposed to Wushu then is that these new generations of athletes they don't really care about that traditional history or traditional Jibin Gong, right? They're just doing things for performance sake, right?
But one thing I want to add is that one very important factor is that, I mean, I don't believe traditional Chinese martial art, authentic martial art was completely lost. But on the other point, a very important point, which is Kung Fu means time, right? So this stuff you need time to practice. and time equals money. If you are, and during that whole transition, China was extremely poor. It was in poverty.
Yeah.
And even if you're martial art, even if you have inherited a good style, you can probably barely find a student, because no one has time. Everybody just trying to make their next meal, like find their next meal. And that's that. I think that is what really destroyed that martial culture is the economy. It's basically the poverty, because that whole cultural revolution basically took down the entire society and economy as well. And I think even till today, I think a lot of people, like I said, it takes time. So those who spend enough time will find the answer. So in China, there's a whole generation who, no matter it started from new Wushu or traditional Wushu, they spend the time on it. They have the time and they just train hard. And that's why today you see a lot of like, seemingly very promising styles and promising, traditional Kung Fu. But not for nothing. I mean, over the past maybe, 10 to 20 years, like you have seen on the internet, people started from like making fun of uh, our lineage of martial art, saying that, oh, that looks nothing like Bajiquan, whatever. To the recent years, that's being, you go to China, people respect, Wutan style very, very much because I never seen Goma Cui in China, but I started to see that in the past 10 years. They started to appear. I think people starting to copy, imitate, and then they see real stuff in it. A lot of these stuff take talent. All you need is someone who's like extra, like sensitive to to the movement, right? And he can really understand, oh, this is really good stuff. And in the recent years, if you go, like I just went to China, went to Shanghai. I met with a successor, Guo Huibo, Guo Huibo 老师. He's a successor of intangible cultural inheritor of Yan Qingmen, right? And he's a scholar, super interesting guy. Graduated from Tiyuan, so he's also trained in modern wushu as well as inherited this traditional Yan Qingchen from Changzhou. He's a Changzhouren. So from his perspective is that Taiwan and a lot of Southeast Asian countries, whether it's Vietnam or Hong Kong or Malaysia, still inherited a lot of the very authentic way of training. And you can copy from the internet, but there are stuff that's just not on the internet. Like in Southeast Asia are still very much very conservative. The whole martial arts scenes are very conservative, and there's stuff that you just can't see. If you don't see it, you can't really learn it. You can't copy it, and that's basically their perspective. The perspective has changed, right? So you went from something that is like, oh, they look different. Taiwan Bajiquan looks very different. Taiwan, whatever. Praying mantis is not even flashy, but that just look very not as impressive. But when they dive deeper into it, this is the real stuff. Especially in the recent year, there are a lot of exchanges between the two. And from my understanding, Liu He Tang, for example, is almost lost. I'm not going to say 100%, but I'm going to say almost, disappeared in China. And luckily in Taiwan, there's still a very strong and vibrant lineage under Zhang Xiangsan. They're still very much like promoting it. And they're doing exchanges in the recent years, and it looks completely different. Just you can just see it. And it's great to see that it's coming back and it's flowing back to China. And for example, Dai Sizhe Shibo, he also has students in China as well, so which is great.
Very interesting point from Viet about that influence from Russia, right? And obviously geographically, its proximity to northern China, right? To influence that kind of standardization of Wushu back then. It totally makes sense. I never thought about it, and I don't remember reading anything about that fact, but totally makes sense coming from Russia, right? And those
Yeah,
gymnastic
I think
history.
like you have to think about like ideologically,
Yes.
How much the Chinese Communist Party perhaps was influenced
Yeah.
by the Russians.
Yeah.
But they took communism
Politically as well, right?
right. So I think, for example, when we say like all of this old stuff was persecuted, might can we think of any reasons why? A lot of these traditions, right? Especially when you talk about how students would go through a ceremony with one teacher and would live and die by that style, live and die by that teacher. And when you had that whole upheaval of society that you saw during the Cultural Revolution, right, where all of a sudden, children were accusing their parents, their teachers, of being anti-revolutionary. Well, that's the same thing, right? All of a sudden, this whole system of having allegiances other than the state, right, other than to a classist society became something of a problem, and that's why that needed to go,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that is one reason why martial arts was discouraged. Comrades don't hurt other comrades, right? We don't, at least publicly, right? This whole concept of jianghu does not exist anymore, right? People challenging each other. You just don't want that in a communist society where everyone's just working for the party, right? You do your keep, you get your share. You don't want people fighting against each other, right? So you have to take out all those dangerous applications and take out all those things, make it so everybody can learn, right? Not just one system, one lineage, one
Yeah,
thing.
they
That's
can
why,
only
like,
they can only
Go ahead.
worship one person, and
that's
in
not
martial art, I mean, we worship. We idolize our master, our teacher. Like
right,
even
right.
in some lineages, they worship, say Zhang Sanfeng, for example. Right. So
Right.
that's definitely considered a big violation.
Sure.
Uh,
And then I think like when we talk about like the Russian gymnastics, I can't say this is my original idea, okay, but I think it does make a lot of sense, right? When you think about you know why Wushu has its characteristic um, look to it, right?
mhm.
That was probably influenced by in some way some kind of in terms of a European aesthetic, right?
And even when they
It's-
score, when
Mhm.
they score Wushu, the score system is
Mm,
essentially
yeah,
from
that's
gymnastics, right?
it's
They
interesting.
they draw where are they going to from this corner to this corner. I'm going to do a difficulty A, B, or C or whatever they
Or
call it,
what
right?
are the deductions you're going to make,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And the
That was
judges get the score before the in this case, the Wushu practitioner performance, right? And they know where they're going to do what everything before they do it. So it's very similar to that. Going back to that, modern Wushu essentially created, let's say, for in order to be a sport, essentially that, right? And it's interesting that when we talk about traditional Wushu and modern Wushu, there are some things that are lost from modern Wushu that I can personally see. I don't know if you guys share this thought with me, but for example, that those the cultural roots of the traditional martial arts are kind of lost in modern Wushu. That part of my master, my lineage, my roots, my style, right? It's kind of lost when we talk about modern wushu. Is that the feeling? Is that um
Yeah.
am I seeing
yeah,
this right or
yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, when I took Alex over to Stockholm for this wushu competition, and we entered the traditional event, and we're watching all the other players warm up, and I saw somebody doing Baji Chuan. I said, "Oh wow, Baji Chuan!" And so I approached that kid. I was like, "Hey, I see you doing Baji Chuan. Who's your teacher?" and he's mentioning his coach. Okay, what lineage is this Baji Chun from? I mean, yeah, I can see it looks like like Da Baji, but it. I was curious. Some of the movements look a bit odd to me. I don't know.
They
I
have a
just learned this.
standardized. They have a standardized Changren Baji that's like in the competition.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of
I mean,
look like.
But I mean, that's exactly, I mean, he didn't even know that. I mean, the funny thing is that this is just a routine that my teacher taught me to be able to compete. I don't know where it comes from. So, oh, okay. So,
Well, okay.
The other thing that we were talking about outside of the recording is something that caught my attention a few years back, because I've been participating in these world traditional championships that are held in China, right? I started participating in 2006, and I think they started with this type of competition in 2004, if I remember correctly, okay? Now, the World Wushu Championships have been always only for Nanchuan, Chanchuan, Tai Chi, and Sanda, okay? Historically. A few years back, I remember looking at some kind of clip in the internet from a World Wushu Championships where there was this division of Qingji Chuan performed by men. And there was another, when I started, doing more research about it, I found out that there was also a Pakwa San division for women. And while we were talking about it, I went online to the EWUF website, and I found the results of the 15th World Wushu Championship held in Shanghai, China. And I can see the divisions there with the results. There's a division for men's Qingji Chuan, and there's a division for women Pakwasan. I find that a little bit interesting because I don't know if the message here is we want to go back to our roots, to our traditional styles, okay, from China. And we were talking about it, that we can see now in mainland China, there are some, moves about taking back traditional styles as well, right? And I found this interesting because now we can see at least these two styles in the World Championship. We were talking also about, when modern Wushu practitioners get to a certain age, they are not able to compete anymore because they can't jump as they used to, okay? They can't do these acrobatics as they used to when they were young. And now what I saw in that division of Shinji Tren is essentially probably, and actually I know for a fact one guy that used to do modern Wushu, and now you see it in that Shinji Tren competition. And then the influence of that modern Wushu within the Shinji Tren division. So it's like, okay, we're having this traditional division within the World Wushu Championship, but we are kind of see influence from modern Wushu in so it's kind of defeats the purpose of having a traditional category about it.
I think that's also, besides the fact that, athletes are getting older, they can only do the more subtle styles. But I also think there's a big possibility that, it's just more commercial. More people in the West, like, I mean, obviously this is all for nationalism. They want to have something that is Chinese and then promote it upon to the world, right? Something that they own. For the longest time, they try to, the government trying to push it into Olympics, but they were having trouble too. And now it's in a very awkward place because, they did promote it. There are teams around the world, but they couldn't, they're having trouble competing with real gymnastic and real judo, real boxing, right? So even the Sanda couldn't enter into the Olympics. And so where's the future of competition wushu? And they still need to survive because it's already established. And then
Yeah.
moving forward, what is what are popular? What are the things that are popular that people likes? Xingyi, like all the Westerners know Xingyi, Bagua, Taiji, like these are some of the most popular styles. They have to have a division for it. They have to be able to include those three major internal styles in order to continue to grow and promote. I think it's more so in a more commercial side of things, to instead of worrying for the older athlete to be able to continue. I think they need new blood, and I think that's the a no-brainer to enter those three category. And I think because of the demand in the internal styles, our acrobatic demands are far less than, say, a Changquan or something like a Hongquan.
Yeah.
So they can absorb more practitioners and more participants into these competitions, and the cycle can continue.
I want to take a slightly unpopular opinion. I don't think the incorporation of Xingyi and Bagua or diversifying means that they're interested in traditional, right? I think that, after decades of having these three divisions of Changquan, Nanquan, Taiji Chuan, they're just bored. They're like, we need to do something else, right?
Exactly.
So,
they need more new shows.
I'll agree with, older athletes are going to, because of the physical demands, are probably going to need to switch to something Xingyi and Bagua. But I don't think that just because they incorporate those events, that means that we're also trying to like promote traditional martial arts. I don't think so. And I think we talked about this as a side conversation that, Xingyi Chuan, which is usually kind of well known for being unadorned, you're going to see it screwed up very soon, right? And historically, like Xingyi Chuan didn't really have that many routines, right? But I would say in the last like 20 years, even traditional Xingyi people have made more routines to kind of fulfill the demand for something. Like, looking at Wuxi Liuhan is not really that much to see. Even Zha Shui, which is like the last form. I'm a forms guy, I'll tell you. It's not that crazy. So people have been adding on, and curriculums have gotten bigger, right? So I think that it'll be interesting to see how Xingyi and Bagua will change, right? In the next couple of decades, right?
I agree with that. And also, there's a major style, one of the most, I think the second most popular style in the world, Wing Chun. I think that will never get into competition.
You never know.
It will not.
Wing Chun is an interesting case because since the movie boom, right? I don't know how many things that you can find on your Facebook and Instagram of Wing Chun, right?
Yeah.
Putting in different combinations and flying kicks and all this stuff, really amazing stuff, but it's not really Wing Chun, right? So
yeah, I think if it is, I mean, with Tai Chi, Xingyi, Bagua, you can still see there are three major styles, and you can still see the characteristic differences, between the two. One is like water, but then if you put Wing Chun into the center stage, it's the guy never moves. It's just like
fighting a telephone box,
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about, the usage applications, fighting applications of traditional Wushu compared to modern Wushu? Do you guys see that there's a lack of usage when we kind of grab a form from a modern Wushu practitioner compared to a Liu Tanlan form or a Pachi form or something like that? Is that really a differentiator factor?
I'm gonna take a jab here. I would even say that there are many traditional schools who don't know usages as well, or don't have a good understanding of usages. So it's not really something that's just modern. Modern, at least they're out in the open and say, we do this for performance. We don't know the application. We don't have like, we're not applying the intent, for using this for fighting. At least they readily admit it. But then you have a trend now, at least with some of these, traditional schools who are also, caught the competition bug and trying to do some, flashy stuff. I'm pretty sure, Viet seen that as well, right? And, when you're judging. And you ask them anything about the usages, and there's nothing there. I mean, they don't have an understanding of the usage, or they probably make up something, using another style to be able to figure out the usage of what they're learning, or they were never taught the usage, right? So I think that's also a problem we have in general with traditional styles. We say that we're about fighting. Where's the fighting? Where's the usage?
Yep. Yeah, I think in terms of movements, I mean, you can still find a lot of the traditional movement in modern wushu, right? So they're still the same. Maybe the mechanics are different, but it looks at, for example, Ulong Panda, right? That's a popular wushu move, and you see it in both traditional and modern wushu. But I have students who train in wushu, and they said, I've been training for 9 years. Today is the day I learned how to use Ulong Panda.
What was that for?
But guess what? If you talk to any traditional martial, even within our own lineages, I still highly doubt, people know how to use Ulong Panda. And I think to Paolo's point, to extend on that, I think the core of martial art is the martial, right? It was born out of application. Without application, it would never exist. It will be Chinese opera, right? That's why there's Chinese opera and there's kung fu. And without the application, there's no kung fu. So having that application aspect of it is the core, and hence people created from that, birth out of strategy, that whole form routines, right? If I do this, they're making predictions, or not really predictions. They're planting all these reactions to create these forms. If I do this, he has to do this to respond, and then I'll do this and that, and then that itself created a form. That's why you have Lanjie, Zaikui, all these forms. They were targeted for different scenarios, but these forms were created for a purpose. But in wushu, there's no purpose to create these forms. These forms are just difficulties, just nandu, and just different level of nandu. But in praying mantis, for example, like I said, like each form has a purpose, right? Shaobaji has a purpose, Dabaji has a purpose. So every form, a good system has all these forms. Each has a purpose to them, and I think that's what differentiate what's traditional versus wushu, just when it comes to material.
I think we've because modern wushu has been around for decades now, and there has been influences back and forth, for traditional being influenced by modern wushu for competition, right, and the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Modern wushu still has traditional movements as a base, right, with a bunch of other stuff. And I've seen in competition where people have thrown in pauses in the middle of forms to show the judges, hey, look at this pretty posture that I'm doing. This is mantis, right?
Yeah.
This is Baji, right? So it's gone back and forth. It isn't just it, and in terms of applications, that's not their purpose. Their purpose is performance.
Yeah.
And I think that rather than, reason why like wushu will never be super popular, right, is mainly because of the athletic prowess that you need. And right now the world is heading towards MMA, right? And wushu is going the opposite direction. So wushu is, I predict that MMA is more likely to be an Olympic sport in the next coming decades, or get more popular than it already is, than wushu is, right? Just the way that the world's going, because let's face it,
it is
all
already.
of the things, all of the things that traditional martial arts said that it was able to accomplish with one buerda, like striking somebody with one strike and dying, we haven't seen it in this modern time, right? A lot of these legends, these stories that we've been brought up on, we're not seeing it right now, right? And I think the world is tired of they're just impatient. They want to see something that gets results, right?
Yeah.
Something to watch, right? If you're going to tell me, like I had a kung fu teacher tell me, if you gave me a fighter, right, gave me somebody who was committed, give me 10 years with them, I can make him a UFC champion. Well, no one has that time, right? Give me 6 months. I'm gonna have this guy run, do weights, hit the bag, hit other people. I'm gonna get him in competition as quickly as possible. If he works out every single day, in 6 months, I can get him ready to fight. No one has that time, right? So I think Wushu is still trying to define itself, and unfortunately, it's already, now that it can't reach that Olympic level. Just like karate, once it fell off that stage, karate's not going back to Olympics, and nor is Wushu. Wushu's way behind, right? Taekwondo, even Taekwondo's footing is being tested right now, right? Whether it can stay in the Olympics, right?
Yeah, I think at the bottom line, it needs to be able to sustain the athletes or the practitioners, which means money. You need income to be able to do it. And to Viet's point, like if someone can be trained into the ultimate fighting champion using kung fu, that person has to be fed or paid with a salary to train, right? That would be nice.
Which is not realistic, right?
That would be nice.
Hey, that's why we all have day jobs, right? I mean, as successful as Baji Shu is, okay? And I'm here to prop up, that program internationally, right? It's shown its success across the globe, okay? And I'm here to advise anybody interested in Baji Shu across the world. If you have an opportunity, right, to do this, and you don't have anybody to practice in person, this is a great time to join that. But at the same time, it's, we have to find ways to coexist with Wushu, right? It's not about, pointing fingers saying this, that, and the other thing. That's never gotten us anywhere, right? And so we just have to see it as two different things, two different arts, right? I think that's the better way to go, rather than say, well, you don't have application, you're about appearances, you're communist, you're this, you're that. It's not going to serve us any good.
No, it is too different. It is too different. I mean, we're just stating the difference, why they're different. And I think to coexist, I think a lot of people are trying to incorporate traditional Wushu. And in the past 10 years or 20 years, they have been having all these master demonstration in these competitions or at the traditional division. Like you will see a bunch of people sign up for the Wushu competition. And then for traditional side, you have a few people sign up to compete. And then when they compete, who's the judge, right? So it's really difficult to judge different styles. Like if you want me to judge White Crane, I cannot. So then you would need all kinds of different experts, which I think is super interesting too. That could be its own competition system that could be created. But then you need to start standardizing. And then people are not going to be happy because
another thing going off Paolo's point is maybe we need a different kind of competition, meaning that let's say we're talking about, do you know the usage of your movements? So apart from just doing a performance, give me 3 applications. Right? Do it, right? Like in Japanese karate, they talk about kata, kumite, kihon, right? They talk about bunkai, application, right? Show me something, right? Teach me something. Teach it to the audience. That should be a measure of how well you know your art, right? Not just a pretty performance, right? Totally. I'll tell you, because I competed in the Seattle Kung Fu Championship, and there's one coming up. And it's weird when I did Baji and Pigua, and I had, these Wushu kids tell me, jiao, jiao. And I was like, I'm not used to that. Usually, you go to traditional Kung Fu competition, it's silent, right? Other than your own hung and ha's. No one's saying jiao to you. No one cares. All these little kids jiao. I was like, I felt kind of moved, right?
Yeah.
I felt it's kind of nice. Right?
Now, what do you think are the benefits then of? Let's talk about the benefits of traditional Wushu and the benefits of modern Wushu in this case, right? Viet made a good point about let's not throw stones at each other, right? Let's grow. Let's see how we can all find our own spots and just move forward, right? But then talking about those, I want to bring up one that I think it's very important. For example, when we talk about health, um, we can say, actually, my Shikong, he's 83 years old, and he can still do Pakwa every morning. He can still do an application. He can still do forms, okay, with 83 years old, which obviously you cannot perform Chan Chuan form when you are 83. So that's one of the benefits that I see, that when we practice traditional wushu, that's something that you can do until the day you die, compared to
Yeah,
modern
I
wushu.
think that is very true. I think that that is also another fine line, not fine line, it's an obvious line that draws the difference between sports versus traditional practice, right? And this Eastern traditional practice, I'm not just talking about Chinese martial art, I'm talking about, even yoga, right? And I'm sure there are other Eastern culture that has these sort of traditional styles, like Vietnam, for example, that cultivates, or nurtures the body versus to consume it. People jog, people run, like doctors would tell you to go, you need exercise, go to weight room or whatever. And it is, if you think about it, in the weight room, the method that your gym coach would tell you to align your body to hold weights and stuff, that is very recent. And every couple of months there's a new theory being released. And there's still, people are still trying to figure out. But a lot of times when I look at it, when it comes to body alignment and structural alignment, the stuff that we practice has it. Everything is there. And I do think there's a value there. It could, continue that route. That could be also a huge aspect of how traditional site can segue into, sort of the modern world as well.
I feel as a member of the medical profession, I have to defend myself. I think it's, we're based on the scientific method. Is something testable, right? Is something reproducible, right? And so, right, there are no fixed answers as to what is the perfect regimen for exercise and diet. And I think that's why this debate continues to go on to the present day. Whereas sometimes with Chinese martial arts, I'll tell you, as a Western trained physician, it can be hard to reconcile those beliefs, right? Seems like, someone sat under a tree or saw a fight between a snake and a crane, or saw an old man in a dream, came up with all this stuff. 少周天, 大周天. It's hard. It's hard. But what I think is that, look, it's stood the test of time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, that is an interesting market to create hypotheses coming from aspects of Chinese medicine, Chinese martial arts, and see whether or not it's testable and reproducible, right?
No, it's interesting. If you look at the recent years of, I played competitive tennis for years. And when I was young, how we were trained in tennis versus now, it's completely different. You see athletes now, they have huge, ginormous legs. Back in the days, people call them, that's tennis figure. That's your tennis, supposed to look like a tennis player. Now it's completely different. And during the transition, you have people who train, we need more speed on the, pounding the balls. So we need to go to the weight room. So people starting to do weightlifting. And then fast forward another 5 to 10 years, people are starting to train their legs. And then now it's all calisthenic, sort of full body kind of integration. And these are things that has been proven in Chinese martial art. And then that's just tennis. You see baseball. If you follow one baseball channel, and it's a very technical sport, and then more and more it's starting to, show up in your feed. And how people pitch, how people bat is very similar to Baji Chuan, Pigua. Like they're starting to notice rooting.
It's good body mechanics.
You're right.
Good body mechanics.
The body mechanics that, say, 10 years ago on a pitcher is basically just swing your arms. Like, what is the fastest way you can swing from point A to point B to throw the ball, where to release and all that stuff. Now they don't look at that. They look at how do you root on your leg before you pitch. You root, you sink, and then you pitch. You have that sort of the leg power. connecting to the earth, the stuff that we always talk about in training traditional art. So I think on the sports side, maybe the medical side, health side still requires time to prove, but I think sports will, because it's kind of similar, because it's kind of like you show results, and results are very, very considerably faster. You can see the results, and from multiple sports, you're going to be seeing more and more similarity between traditional martial art versus, not versus, and modern sports science. And the protection as well. I mean, I have students who are 65 years old, came to me, I have bad knees, and after training our grinding step, they're like, my knees are stronger than ever, only because they move their feet before their knees. And a lot of people are confused about the yaoma, right? You have to move your waist, move your core. But then when you move your waist and core first, guess
You're
what's in between?
twisting your knees. Yeah.
So those are little things that even traditional martial artists, they don't pay attention to, but it's there, right? So if you learn the, correct way, it could make an impact, make a difference and show quick results. In a couple of months, you already see results.
I think one thing that Western science endeavors to do is kind of give a language and make things measurable, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, using terms like yao and qua, like anatomically, like there's no direct translation into English, right? You can use words like hip girdle and waist, but there's something missing there, right?
Yeah.
So I think there will be, I think that's what Western science is endeavoring to do. And I think that's how you're going to bring traditional martial arts into this modern age, is where a lot of these nebulous terms that have been ill-defined, right, are going to have more of an explanation behind them, right? Maybe, you still can't do it right off the get-go, right? You're still going to need the time that, Vincent talked about, right? Kung Fu is time, but at least understand the concept. Well, here's another way of talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Physics, biomechanics, what have you.
You have coaches, right? So gym coaches are influencers. You have sports coaches are influencers. Not even getting to the doctor part. Doctor says this, medical says proven this and that. Like the coaches would say, hey, do cupping, right? You see all the a lot of Olympic the cuppings, but doctors, Western science is like, it's unproven, but you still see a lot of these so-called influencers, and they're going to bring a lot more young athletes like believing in cupping, acupuncture, and all that.
Have you noticed though? It doesn't look like whoever's doing the cupping knows what they're doing. It's all over the place.
Right. They don't know where they're cupping it.
They're just showing it. That's all.
It's a cool way to do a tattoo, temporary tattoo.
In Vietnam, you have people on the side of the street that will do cupping for you if you pay them money, right? That's what it looks like. Like there's no rhyme or reason. It's not going down any meridian or channel. It's just
wherever they fit. Whatever it fits.
That's so funny.
Oh my god.
All right, so I was saying it's they listen to the coaches, the gym coaches more so than anything. But go ahead. I think our time is up.
We have 3 more minutes. Anything that you guys want to add before we finish this nice conversation?
No, I think definitely the topic about coexisting with, modern and traditional. I mean, we're basically in the same boat, right? We're trying to keep, traditional Chinese culture, Chinese martial arts, or even the modern Wushu alive somehow, and trying to, have this identity, right? There's enough room for both. Just depends what you like doing.
I also think in movies and TVs, entertainment, that's where traditional and modern is going to mesh very well.
We need a Baji movie. That Baji TV series wasn't good enough. We need a Baji movie.
Seriously.
There's a movie from Jet Li. I don't remember the name, but where the one, right, where he shows Pakwa there. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah, 20 years later, when I watch that movie again, I just can't believe how cheesy that movie was. I remember thinking it was so cool when it first
Yeah.
came out. I was like, it's Shingen Bagua, don't you guys know?
No,
Exactly.
but like imagine to an untrained eye, that's like, that's cool. You can tell the differences. One is very soft, one is like
Yeah.
very linear.
Mhm.
But one of my students, the big guy, Doug, he's a cinematographer, and so he knows a lot of people from the movie industry, especially in the choreography stunts. And they're saying they're constantly looking for new materials because there's certain styles that the audience can tell, what's cool, they appreciate this or appreciate that, what's looking real, like the wire looking fake.
Mm.
Like Baji, for example, is one style that is very in demand and popular. You can see in Matrix, you can see in Shang-Chi, like out of nowhere, that you just out they were fighting in Wing Chun and then pop.
Signature.
Signature
Yeah.
move.
The signature move.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining today. I really appreciate your time. And this was a nice discussion.
Thank you,
Hopefully
Jorge.
we
This
can
is
all
great.
get.
Let's do more.
Yeah, let's zoom. There are so many topics that I would like to talk about. But we'll go one by one.
You
Let's.
should do a crowdsourcing for the topic,
How is that?
like a crowdsource, like ask people
Oh,
to
yes.
comment below.
What do they
Comment
want to
below.
listen to about next time? Yes, we definitely should do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that.